Good morning, it's Thursday, November 27th, 2014, and this is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, protests continue in St. Louis and across the U.S. over the decision not to charge the white policeman who killed a black teenager in Ferguson, Missouri. A new intelligence report in the UK reveals that Lee Rigby's killer has mentioned his desire to kill soldiers on Facebook, but the authorities were not notified. And later on the show, Hugh Jackman takes on the role of the villain Blackbeard in the first Pan trailer. Good morning, I'm Oded Gruber, and we begin in the U.S., where the protests that began in Ferguson, Missouri are spreading across the nation, even though tonight was calmer in the St. Louis suburb following the intervention of the National Guard. Some 300 protesters stormed City Hall. Meanwhile, the sympathy protests that broke in other cities seem to be spreading. Police arrested protesters in Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, even in London, where hundreds gathered in front of the U.S. Embassy. Joining me now in the studio is Channel 2's Foreign Affairs editor, Asaf Yechezkeli. Good morning to you, Asaf. We'll hear from you on this matter in just a little bit. Let's first watch a story to recap the events till now.
Protests are spreading across the U.S. in a scale which surprised even law enforcement officials.
I don't think Captain Johnson or myself or any commander here really envisioned how bad last night was. I think that was a scale that fortunately is seldom seen here in this country.
44 arrests were made Tuesday night, the majority of them misdemeanors. Some included unlawful use of a weapon and assaults against police officers, as eyewitnesses uploaded footage of looting and ignition of police cars. President Barack Obama said residents are to abide the law and condemned what he called criminal behavior.
Burning buildings, torching cars, destroying property, putting people at risk, that's destructive. And there's no excuse for it.
In acts of solidarity, demonstrators from New York to California marched through cities to protest the Missouri grand jury decision. In Washington, D.C., a crowd lay in the street for 4.5 minutes to commemorate the 4.5 hours that 18-year-old Michael Brown's body lay in the street after he was shot and killed by Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson. In an ABC interview, Wilson described the struggle with Brown.
I just felt the immense power that he had. I mean, the way I've described it is it was like a 5-year-old holding on to Hulk Hogan. That's just how big this man was.
Hulk Hogan?
He was very large, very powerful man.
Wilson added he has a clean conscience as the police and the National Guard continue to face off with angry crowds, sensing there could be further clashes.
Asaf, we've seen the protests in Ferguson die down a little bit tonight, but I think we've not seen the end of it yet.
Yes, well, first, I guess the governor of Missouri and perhaps even President Obama should thank the American calendar, because it's the eve of Thanksgiving and everyone is traveling, and also heavy snowfall brings frozen temperatures, so the demonstrations are dwindling. They are calmer and they are smaller in size. But yes, it is not the end of it. We saw the interview of Officer Wilson, and it is prompting further anger from the demonstrators. But I should say something about the grand jury proceedings. It is a preliminary proceedings. It was supposed, it's a centuries-old proceeding supposed to prevent the unlawful use of the law against its citizens, persecution of the prosecution, and so on. So we know that there have been some black jurors in this grand jury. We know that some black witnesses, of the 60 witnesses to the event, confirmed Officer Wilson's story. So if you have, it's not one-sided. It's not all the black jurors against the white officer, and it's not all white testifiers against the black authorities. It's they should have prosecuted him or indicted him in order for a judge and perhaps for everyone to see on court TV a real trial of this officer.
Right.
His story seems very reliable in some way. Of course, he's
trying to defend himself.
He's trying to defend himself. It's a 2-month-old story. He has his version already inside his head. But why not put it on trial, put him on trial?
Interesting question, but at this point in time, the decision by the grand jury is final, is it not?
Yes, the governor said he is not entertaining any thought of putting a special counsel or a special prosecutor to rethink the idea of putting a new grand jury. It's never done in the U.S.
Right. But there is something happening on the federal level.
Yes, it's a Justice Department interrogation followed by, in close connection with the FBI. It's something like we call in Israel the Machash investigation. Internal affairs investigation. And they still may put him on some kind of leave or on some kind of trial, internal trial, but it could be months away.
Right, and President Obama did say that this will be a very serious examination of the case. We'll see what happens there. But let's turn now to St. Louis, Missouri, and joining us over the phone from there is Rabbi Susan Talve from the Central Reform Congregation. Hello, Susan.
Hello.
Thank you for speaking to us.
I just walked in the door from Ferguson.
Yes. Well, then you're in a great position to tell us what does it look like on the streets there right now.
Well, tonight there weren't as many protesters, but you know there was chanting and there was marching, and there is definitely a presence there. There were, I think, if you look carefully, I think there were more National Guard and militarized police than there were protesters tonight. And there may actually have been more press than there were protesters as well. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the protesters that have been out there, the regulars, were still out there and are committed to being there for the long run until, you know, we start to see some kind of a change, systemic change in the legal system, and some kind of accountability now in the justice system that really seems to have failed us in the case of Michael Brown.
I see, but at least at this point...
And, you know, the other thing to note is that there are actions going on all day in St. Louis and will be going on throughout the weekend. There's a boycott of, you know, different stores, and, you know, this is a big shopping time for America. The big shopping season starts with Thanksgiving and what we call Black Friday. And a lot of people are going to boycott, you know, have an economic boycott to have their, you know, just to have their moral outrage be felt.
Of course, to have their voices heard. Tell me, were you surprised?
They closed down the Galleria today. I'm sorry?
Were you surprised at the spread of the protests, at the fact that other cities across the U.S. Joined in on this?
171 cities last night across America. Hundreds of thousands of people joined the protest. And, you know, they were joining the protest not just because of Michael Brown, but because they recognize that these same kinds of injustices have been happening in their towns and cities across America. So while I don't think we needed to be surprised, but I think we were very uplifted to know that this moment, this tragic moment in St. Louis has turned into a national movement for change.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that change will come and normal life will get back on track there in St. Louis. Thank you, Susan.
Sure. Thank you, and Kol Tov for everybody there.
Thank you so much. Same to you. The parents of Michael Brown spoke with Charlie Rose on PBS about the grand jury's decision. Let's take a look at that now.
And as his father has said before, he's had a conversation with him about how to deal with the authorities if you're approached.
Which was?
Which was to obey, basically. If they ask you to do something, you're to do it. And I believe that he asked my son to stop. And I believe that's what he did. He stopped, and he turned around, to get down on his knees like the officer asked him.
We're different now. Just have to keep the faith. That hole will never be filled. We have other children that we love, but, you know, that I think that actually broke me. That was my first, you know, spent a lot of time together. It just broke me. It broke me.
Respect is definitely at the core. And we deserve equal amount of respect. And we're not getting that. And that was all that we wanted, was equality for what happened to our son. And I think it's very unfair, and I'm just like, I never knew that this is how things would go. This is how things operated, that the system could fail you so much.
Well, their pain is very obvious there. I'd like to bring into the conversation now over the phone Professor Rockaway, Robert Rockaway from the History Department at the Tel Aviv University. Good morning to you, Professor Rockaway.
Hi, good morning.
So I'd like to hear your take on where we stand.
Look, there's absolutely no question in my mind that black Americans are treated differently and seen differently. The racism that I saw as a child still continues. It's not as bad, certainly, but it's there. In my lifetime as a child, I saw a race riot in Detroit in 1943. Then again, I saw the race riot in Detroit in 1967. And troops were sent in by the United States government, and the way they ended the riot, they just shot the rioters. And it was it was started by blacks, and they were fighting, and they were burning stores, and the way it was put down was by military force. And I remember as a child standing on the corner with my grandparents and mother in 1943 and watching the Jeep spin by the street the main street that we lived near, filled with soldiers and machine guns, mounted machine guns.
Well, and, more recently, we all remember the protests around the Rodney King case in L.A., but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. No, of course not. We're not at that. But you notice troops were sent into Missouri, to Ferguson, Missouri, and right away, and that helped put it down. So you have that situation. It's like rebellion. And look what went on across the United States. If it was a white person, a white man shot by a white policeman, would there have been demonstrations all across the United States, in Boston, in Detroit, in Cleveland, Chicago, Los Angeles, Oakland? How
far do you think this can go?
Look, things have to be done, but how do you change attitudes? You can pass laws, but can you change people's minds? Legally, the African Americans are equal under the law. I mean, they have all the same rights. But does that change perceptions? That's the problem. I mean, how do you change people's view of things? Certainly it's changed.
We've seen a big change. In 2008, we've seen President Obama get elected. We thought that real change has come.
Okay, you've seen that, but recent studies have shown a great deal of the opposition to him. Political scientists at the University of Georgia put out a book that I felt, as soon as he was elected, I felt that this was, why did they dislike him? Why the hatred for him so much?
Right.
Part of the reason is he's black.
Yeah.
A black man in our White House. How does that sound? A black man in the White House. And there's this resistance to him practically on everything he does. He may not be the greatest president in American history, but a great deal of the animosity, you have to just admit it, is because he's black, and they just can't stomach it. Now, certainly things have gotten better, but the perception is still there. Blacks perceive they don't get the same kind of justice that white people get. You may say, no, it's not true, they do. Well, that's their perception. And frequently, you act on how you perceive things, not maybe on the reality, but how you perceive them. And they do not perceive that as citizens of the United States, they are equal and that they get the same kind of consideration. Fast story. I heard this on the radio when I was visiting Detroit last summer. A black man was talking. They were talking about things like this. He said, look, I belong to a company, a large company, and we all have the same credit cards. He said, we were standing in line at a hotel to register. He said, everybody got their room registered. When it came to me, the man standing behind the desk, the clerk, asked me for my identification. He said, we all have the same credit cards. We were all standing in the same line. He said, so the rest of the people in the line from the company, white men, they said, if you ask him for identification, we're leaving the hotel. So then he said, why? He said, why? We're all in the same company. Why was I the only one asked for identification?
Yeah, certainly problematic.
And so you have these problems that go on, and it just grates them. Of course, riots. You see the young people rioting, looting, having a great time. On the other hand, the perception of the older people and many younger people as well, they're just not getting the same breaks.
Of course,
they're not as whites.
Thank you so much, Professor Rockaway.
Sure enough.
Asaf, I want to get back to you and ask you about the media coverage of the story and how that may help contain it or raise the flame. Because we've seen the officer being interviewed, we've seen the victim's family being interviewed. What do you think?
Yeah, so, well, if you watch Fox News on the U.S., you definitely see a wave of fiery demonstrations all across the U.S., and they pretend them as more violent than they may be on the ground. But I should note also that following what Professor Rockaway said, there are white sympathizers among these protesters, and there are several, if not a lot, of black officers among the officers that are supporting them, and it should have some impact on the political level, because the Republican Party will have to react.
Right. You think it's not necessarily, while it is in its core a white versus black thing, it is also a political question.
Yes, Hillary Clinton is supposed to decide any day now on her preliminary run to the nomination of the Democratic Party. Jeb Bush on the Republican side, they will have to say something on the issue. They cannot hold silent, and perhaps on next Sunday's morning editions and talk shows.
Yeah, that could be the case, because it seems that with the spread of it, certainly you can't ignore it. Yes. Anything you think President Obama can do to help contain it?
Not really, because he says the same things all over again, following Trayvon Martin case and following the Cleveland case of the 12-year-old boy killed only a few days ago, holding a toy gun. He says the same things, and he cannot say any. He can go to Missouri and visit the protesters. That's not going to do anything.
Yeah, it might even raise the flame. It might even put him on against the police.
Yes.
Not sure he can do that. Thank you so much, Asaf, for joining us this morning. Moving on to Syria, more than 95 people killed and 120 injured in the northern city of Raqqa, one of the main strongholds of the Islamic State. This is the result of airstrikes by Syrian government forces. Reports suggest at least 52 civilians were killed, and the number of casualties is expected to rise as many people are critically injured. Joining us in the studio now is I-24 News Middle East analyst Ali Waqid. Good morning to you, Ali. Let's watch the report we have on this and come back to you.
The death toll of Syrian citizens in Raqqa continued to rise on Wednesday since government air raids struck the northeastern city the day before. The number of reported casualties is estimated at over 90 people, the majority of which were civilians, including women and children. Over 130 more people have reportedly been injured. Raqqa is the only provincial capital to fall from government control since the outbreak of the 2011 uprising against President Bashar al-Assad. The Syrian government has launched frequent airstrikes in the city and in other IS positions, but activists say most of the casualties so far have been civilians. Following the airstrikes, the United Nations revealed new information about the humanitarian crisis in Syria, highlighting the urgency of the situation. According to the UN, some 12 million people in Syria are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. 7.6 million people are displaced inside Syria. More than 3 million people have fled the country, mostly to Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. And over 200,000 Syrians are still besieged by either government or opposition forces. Despite the alarming numbers, UN officials say humanitarian appeals for Syria and the region remain critically underfunded. Meanwhile, Syrian refugees in Greece have resorted to staging hunger strikes to pressure the Greek government to grant them asylum.
I don't know if they will pay attention or not, but we are hoping, that's our last hope, our last chance.
Security in Syria deteriorating continuously, and help from world bodies often falling short, Syrian refugees are pressed to take matters into their own hands.
Ali, what can you tell us about what's going on in the region there?
Well, I can tell you that for the moment we have 2 wars taking place there, and the Syrian regime trying to use one of these 2 wars. First of all, of course, the war of the international coalition against the Islamic State, the war, and as part of this war, of course, the Peshmerga, Kurds Peshmerga, that transferred from Iraq to Syria via Turkey. And waiting to precious opportunities, the regime, when it identifies that it has a chance to hurt the Islamic State in its stronghold of Raqqa, which is the stronghold of the Islamic State, he is striking. But the regime is using, of course, the international coalition campaign. Now, Oded, we are talking about millions of Syrians, almost 12 million Syrians that are in status of needing humanitarian aid. Of course, the millions of refugees, and the Syrian army is trying, first of all, to defend big cities of Aleppo, of Damascus, and the environment, and less giving priority to Raqqa and to Kobane and the region and the borders between Turkey, because it is identifying the fact that the international campaign is concentrated there. But the Syrian regime is well afraid of the fact that Turkey is conditioning its support and its involvement in this campaign in changing also the campaign, not only against the Islamic State, but also against the Syrian regime of Bashar Assad, which is also, it was a precondition of the Saudians in order to be part of this coalition.
Is it a free-for-all? It's everyone fighting everyone there?
For the moment, it's almost everyone fighting for everyone. As I said, we have the Western Arab coalition against the Islamic State. We have the Kurds against the Islamic State. We have rebels against themselves, and the Syrian army, who is concentrating its effort on the capital and its environment. But we can have a turnover in this scenario if the West, with a new defense minister in the United States, that can change the tactics and decide to attack simultaneously Syrian targets and Islamic State targets, this can be a whole new story, because we know and we are hearing about thousands of volunteers from Iraq that are ready to go inside Syria to fight at the side of the regime, and it can be a bigger mess than it is now. For the moment, we are seeing like local and sporadic attacks, no strategy behind this attack.
You're talking by coalition forces.
And also by the Syrian. The Syrian are surprised from time to time from the fact that, in spite of the international effort, the Islamic State is capable to take control over new villages and new cities in some zones in Syria.
Earlier this month, we've seen a video released by the Islamic State of them beheading 18 Syrian soldiers. Obviously, the fight there is going on strong.
It is going strong, and the question is, how come, in spite of the international campaign, the Islamic State is succeeding to be supplied with more weapons, with more new heavy weapons, anti-craft missiles that were shot against Syrian craft, and the whole story need a change in both the international attitude. Turkey, that is playing with and without the coalition, And if Turkey enters the game, I think that the situation of the Islamic State will be weakened, but Turkey has no interest to weaken the main rival of the Syrian regime.
Right. Now, if the international community does get involved more seriously, as you suggested, this would obviously, since it is led by the U.S., would it require troops on the ground there, you think?
I think we saw that the equilibrium of power demands a change in the attitude. Now, whether militarily we are talking about boots on the ground or not, I don't see any scenario that the Islamic State is fought and obliged to regress without an intervention on the ground of the Arab coalition. Now, the big problem is that intervening on the ground mean indirectly giving support to the Syrian regime. This is why the Saudis and the Turks are demanding to discuss the whole strategy, and that this war should be led simultaneously against the regime and against the Islamic State, which some members in the coalition, Egypt is part of this coalition and is not ready to see the regime of Bashar Assad disappear. Some Western countries know that the regime, in spite of all the atrocities that it had committed, is the guarantee for the safety of minorities, in especially ethnic and religious minority, the Druze and the Christians and others, in spite the war between, like what we think, the war between the Alawite regime of Bashar Assad and the Sunnis.
Right. So it's more of a question of who's the lesser of two evils here. Yeah. Now, who has momentum at this point in time? Because this has been going on for 4 years. There's no end, not even a break in sight.
The truth is that for a while, like 3-4 months ago, we thought that the regime has the momentum, but we saw that in the last weeks the regime is fighting over neighborhoods even around Damascus. And in Aleppo, we thought that by the end of this year, the regime will be clearing the regions of Damascus, Aleppo, Homs, and other cities. And now we saw that it is amazing that the Islamic State and Al-Nusra Front are in war against an international coalition, but it doesn't prevent them from launching counterattacks in the big cities of Syria. So right now we cannot talk about momentum. The Islamic States and Al-Nusra Front are being supplied with weapons constantly, and of course the Russians and Iranians are supporting the Syrian regime. So unlike the 3-4 months ago, unlike summer, we cannot talk now about the momentum for both sides.
Well, what we can say is that even though there are protests surrounding Ferguson, that we don't see as many protests surrounding what's happening in Syria, even though this has been going on for a while now. Thank you so much, Ali. We're almost done with our first segment of the show. Coming up later on the show, a new intelligence report regarding the murder of Lee Rigby a year ago in the UK claims that Facebook could have picked up the killer's message in advance. Let's, before we get to that, hear some more of this morning's headlines. Thank you for staying with us. Let's say hello and good morning now to Anthony Grant, who joins us daily to discuss the news you missed while scanning the headlines. Good morning to you, Tony.
Good morning, Oded. Well, I guess we have some dramatic news. Well, all the news is dramatic, but we have a New York Times reporting that a video has been released which shows Cleveland police officer in this incident that happened over the weekend, a young boy playing with a toy gun who was shot, killed. The video shows that it happened in basically 2 seconds, and that's what's making the news.
Yeah, it is pretty troubling, I have to say. You know, we've been talking about what's been going on in Ferguson, and this happened following I think just before.
This was, I think, on Saturday. It was just before the grand jury verdict
decision.
Came out. Yeah,
and it just shows. It comes to show that this isn't a one-time thing. You know.
Right. This is the issues that play into these incidents, which often have tragic outcomes, are not just in Ferguson, but they can happen in Cleveland, New York City.
And this video really shows it.
Yeah, really I think it'll be gaining traction in the media and sort of looking at what could have been done differently in that case. bringing it back to the Middle East, but as being covered in London, the Financial Times has a very interesting story headlined, "Unrest Takes Its Toll on Israel's Economy," with a picture there of the main shuk or marketplace in Jerusalem, which in that picture at least is largely devoid of tourists. And the article is saying that tourist arrivals into Israel are down something like 19% in October.
Wow.
And it's not just because of the incidents of violence in Jerusalem, but there's been kind of a pickup since the summer, but the Jerusalem terror attacks, of course, lead to people canceling travel. But also it mentions that there's a bit of a weakening faith in the Israeli investment climate because of high taxes and a volatile regulatory environment.
It's interesting because, you know, it's been said during the financial crisis in 2008, Israel was almost unscathed and liked to present itself as a whole different ball game. And we see that maybe it's catching up with us.
A little bit, yes. Although the article also notes that Intel has invested in a new factory, or will be soon, in Kiryat Gat. So it's kind of mixed messages. But again, tourism is always something that's...
Reality tends to be complicated
it affects
that way.
Vacations. Very quickly, a headline from the Times of London, which just is a bit amusing. 2,000 U.S. troops swamp race riot town. And talking about Ferguson.
Yeah.
So they're casting it in very sort of, the big bad USA, they can't get their act together kind of terms. I mean, you're not going to see that kind of language in too many American papers, but to the British, it's a race riot town.
It's interesting. We've also seen tonight a demonstration outside the U.S. Embassy in London in protest of what's been going on in Ferguson. And it's certainly, I can't blame them for presenting it this way, especially since the National Guard and the police in the U.S. are now seem so militarized.
Yeah,
you know?
that's a huge issue.
Bad.
And not to minimize the situation at all, but it is something that certainly does not cast the United States in a very
positive
good light.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Let's talk about just briefly Ukraine. It was being reported, Bloomberg mentions here, that Germany's Angela Merkel has said to reject Ukraine's NATO bid. And basically, Merkel's government, according to the article, is alarmed by Ukraine's President Poroshenko plan to hold a referendum on Ukraine joining NATO, saying that this would just be a dead end that would only make matters with Russia even more inflamed than they already are.
Is she suggesting some other approach?
I think she's suggesting just to kind of to keep calm and carry on at the moment, to something like that. But she does NATO and Ukraine at this point in time not a good mix, according to the German government.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she is the strong woman in
when
Europe,
talks,
so I guess we
should
listen to
I don't know if Putin listens, but.
Yeah.
A Guardian, also a big story being followed in the British press. We know in May 2013, British soldier Lee Rigby was stabbed to death brutally by two Muslim extremists in London. Well, now, this headline here says an ex-counter-terror chief has said that criticism of Facebook over the Rigby murder is unfair.
Yeah, we're going to deal with that in just a little bit.
There you go.
We're going to talk to our person in London, hear from him about it. It's a very interesting case.
Interesting
I think
story.
It's very complicated also. You should stick around, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it as well.
Okay, well, I've got complications for you in China as well.
All right.
South China Morning Post reports that a Beijing store has sparked a racism row by banning Chinese customers. Yeah, that's kind of, you scratch your head and think, what?
What?
Yeah, what? According to this article, a sign was hung in front of the shop door saying some Chinese are too annoying, or that's what the salesperson said. They buy a lot of, they try on clothes without actually buying them. But actually in China, racial discrimination is not disallowed. So they're actually allowed to ban the Chinese customers from the Chinese shop, apparently, as much as they want. So, yeah, it's interesting stuff, right?
Let me tell you, that is a different world out there.
Yeah, that's a different kind of world.
Wow.
Let's talk about, for a moment, soccer or football for international fan. Marca, which is a Spanish newspaper that's talking about sports, talks about this flap with Real Madrid, which has actually removed a cross from its logo to, some papers are saying, to appease a bank in Abu Dhabi. This is a bit controversial because Real Madrid wants to cultivate business ties with this bank, and it's a lot of money involved. But if you can see in the picture there, there's this credit card where the little Christian cross on the top of the crown has been sort of expunged, and people are saying, should that really be done just for good business purposes? But it's actually kind of violating the authenticity of the team's logo. Yeah, who knows?
With the other big team in Spain being Barcelona, of course, that is supported by UNICEF, not selling out for anyone.
Now they have to change their logo too, I guess, to make things equal. I don't know.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you.
On to our next topic. As mentioned by Tony, in May 2013, Lee Rigby was brutally attacked and killed in an attempted beheading by two men near his military barracks in London. Now, a new intelligence report claims the authorities were not notified that the killer had written of his desire to kill a soldier on a website, later revealed to be Facebook. Critics say the report merely aims to draw fire away from intelligence agencies, while the victim's family says they are holding Facebook partially responsible. Let's take a look now at a report prepared by I-24 News correspondent in London, Jonathan Sacradotti.
The current round of debate over intrusive surveillance, internet privacy and technical intelligence operations started back in May last year. British soldier Fusilier Lee Rigby was run down by two men in a car and then hacked to death with knives and a meat cleaver, as members of the public watched in shock and horror. This all took place in broad daylight on a public road just outside the Royal Artillery Barracks in Woolwich, southeast London, only yards from a junior school. The two killers, Michael Adebolajo and Michael Adebowale, are British converts to Islam of Nigerian descent. Immediately after the brutal attack, they told passers-by who filmed them that they had killed the British soldier to avenge the killing of Muslims by the British Armed Forces. This week, the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament has published its report into what the intelligence agencies knew about those responsible for the murder. While the 192-page report declared that ultimately the British intelligence agencies could not have prevented the murder, many are questioning the failings that have been identified across the board in the run-up to the attack. Both murderers were known to security services. Indeed, the committee refused to comment on the allegation that MI5 had actually been trying to recruit Adebolajo as an agent. Over the last 18 months, the committee considered huge volumes of secret documents supplemented by evidence sessions during which they cross-examined MI5, MI6, GCHQ, police and ministers. Between them, the two terrorists appeared in 7 different agency investigations, mainly as low-level subjects of interest. Adebolajo, though, was under intrusive surveillance at various times between 2009 and 2013, and a final period of surveillance ended on April the 11th, 2013, just over a month before the murder of Lee Rigby. And Adebolajo was permitted to come back to the UK despite his arrest in Kenya for charges of being a member of Al-Shabaab. The report states that there were errors in these operations where processes were not followed, decisions not recorded, or delays encountered. The most controversial part of the report reveals that in December 2012, Adebowale used a foreign online internet service to discuss his plan to kill a British soldier. The report says that his discussion with an Al-Qaeda operative in Yemen detailed his intent to murder a soldier in the most graphic and emotive manner. That online service was not named in the report, but it's being widely reported now that Facebook had previously shut down Adebowale's accounts on the site because he had discussed terrorism. While Facebook detected this extremist content and did shut down his account, the company did not report its concerns to the security services. All of this comes as the British government wishes to introduce a new law granting police new powers to monitor citizens' personal data. Some suggest that the timing of this report and the early leaking of some details of it were designed to bolster support for this new legislation, which has upset campaigners who say that it threatens the privacy of individuals. Prime Minister David Cameron has said that internet companies have a moral duty to act because their networks are being used to plot murder and mayhem. Britain's terror level is currently listed by MI5 as severe. That's the second highest level possible. And concerns remain over the return to this country of Britons who are currently fighting alongside terrorists in Syria and Iraq. Beheadings abroad and at home, the spread of violent extremism, and the increase in smaller-scale one- or two-man terror attacks make this controversial debate about monitoring suspects one that the government cannot afford to ignore.
Jonathan is now joining us via Skype from London. Good morning to you, Jonathan.
Good morning, Oded.
So, this report, how serious is it?
The report seems, in the view of many, to pass the buck somewhat. So Facebook didn't kill Lee Rigby, and it's worth stating that. MI5, MI6, and GCHQ didn't kill Lee Rigby, but those intelligence agencies did have 6 or more chances to apprehend Adebowale and Adebolajo, and they failed to. And it seems to many that the government is concentrating more on the issue of whether online services like Facebook should have some sort of obligation to report when they detect some sort of terrorist discussion to the security services. And people are saying that really the government should be focusing instead on the security services and the failings that they inevitably make here and there when they have people under surveillance.
Of course. Now, you said that some people spoke out about Facebook's moral duty to report such matters. But beyond their moral duty, is there what does the law say?
Well, simply, it's very difficult for the law to say anything because Facebook is an American company. Now, Facebook has 1.3 billion users with approximately 1 million posts every minute. Algorithms are used to detect language that might be contravening the rules of the site itself, and quite often people's accounts are closed down, often when they've been flagged by an algorithm, sometimes checked by a human being and sometimes not. They have a data center in Ireland which manages these sorts of things for the entire region of Europe, Middle East and Africa. So you can see that the task would be enormous to spot terrorists, even from direct conversations like the one that we're told took place in this particular instance. However, if they are closing down accounts of people because they are found to be discussing things like terrorism or, in other cases which make the news, child abuse, it is possible that they could pass on the names of those people to the security services, and that's what the committee is asking for. But how they could actually implement this in law is almost impossible, and nobody's specifically saying how they would like to see it done, because it would require law changes in America as well as here in the UK to an extent that I don't think would really be possible.
Right. Now, the atmosphere currently in the UK is certainly moving towards fighting terror also within Britain. Beyond these new laws that are trying to pass, that perhaps will be passed, what can you tell us about the atmosphere in the street regarding this move, this loss of some privacy?
In Britain, people are fiercely protective of their privacy, and they believe that they should be able to discuss with others what they like online, on telephones, without fear of that being intercepted by security services. Of course, there is a necessity for that sort of thing when people are under surveillance, but there is a strong requirement for burdens of proof to show that those people need to be intrusively monitored. And in fact, this report has highlighted around 6 failings where the security services could have prioritized or speeded up requests for closer surveillance of these 2 people. So really, there are enough laws in place, many feel, for this to be carried out as it is. And there doesn't need to be new legislation in order to make it work better. It just needs to be applied better.
I see. Well, we'll, of course, keep following the story. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Still coming up later on the show, the Israeli parliament held an emergency discussion about the Tel Aviv Cinematics intention to host a Nakba-themed film festival. But first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Welcome back. It's still Thursday, November 27th, 2014. This is still the morning edition. I'm still Oded Grober, at least for now. Thank you so much for staying with us. Joining us now in the studio is I-24 News cultural correspondent Shachar Peled. Good morning to you, Shachar.
Good morning.
Fancy running into you here.
Yes, what a surprise.
What are you bringing up?
So today we speak of a film festival which commences today. It's actually called the 48mm Film Festival, but also known as the Nakba Film Festival. It's dedicated to films about the Palestinian Nakba and the return of refugees. Now, a short background. Nakba actually means catastrophe, and it refers to the Israel's winning back in 1948 of the War of Independence and its consequences for the Arab population. This is a film festival consisting of short and feature films which were produced specifically for this festival by Palestinians and Israeli filmmakers. And the initiators of this festival, an organization called Zochrot, Women Remember, wanted to put an emphasis on the date November 29th. This is a three-day festival, so it includes November 29th, marking, of course, the 67th anniversary this year of the UN resolution back in 1947 about the partition plan of Palestine and Israel, and once again, its consequences. They believe this is a key milestone of the conflict and the uprooting of hundreds and thousands of Palestinians from their homes.
And this is happening in Tel Aviv.
This is happening in Tel Aviv Cinematheque. It's causing some stormy controversy. We'll reach that in a moment. I want to start with an example of what is shown in this festival. So here is a segment we're going to see from a film called The National Park. It's by Amir Yatziv, an Israeli filmmaker. It's a computer-generated animation of villages which were neglected and empty now of Palestinians. It's actually a combination of several villages with a special laser technology which scanned these villages and combined them together. And what we see is we walk through an abandoned village with the narration of a man who is longing to return home. Let's see a short segment.
My dear, if you happen to pass Nazareth, would you kindly call on my very elderly father and mother-in-law, who live in a house with a red-tiled roof by the road to Tiberias, next to the house where I used to live, and inquire into their condition, and let me have their news. An initial problem is what to do with ancient cities. Can they be frozen as they are now, with all their Eastern form and exotic appeal? Or should one try to develop them as modern centers of settlements by saving only some monuments?
It is interesting visually, I must say.
Very interesting visually, and it gives you a look into a world that probably you would never find yourself in.
And that, I think, is really what this festival is all about.
Absolutely, and yet none other than an emergency discussion of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset Finance Committee, was held yesterday, in an attempt to pull funding from the Tel Aviv Cinematheque. Now, let's start with Israel Beitenu MK Alex Miller, who requested this emergency discussion. He says the body that receives state funds should not support the idea that the state's creation was a catastrophe. We must say the Tel Aviv Cinematheque gets some 250,000 shekels. That's less than $100,000 from the government, but still, for a cultural organization in Israel, this is a lot of money.
It's not nothing, but I would assume that their budget is
well, this is a quarter of their budget, so this is a lot of money. A yearly budget is about $1.2 million for the Israeli Cinematheque, so 250,000 shekels is a considerable amount, absolutely. And what they're saying is this does not mean we are objecting to the independence of the State of Israel. We are only commemorating these consequences and uprooting of the Palestinians. There is a reaction from the Zochrot organization, which initiated this festival for its second year now. This is an attempt at silencing, they say. This is a sign of an extreme and dangerous policy that tries to extract anything that does not accord with the view of those in power. So this is once again cultural, with a political background, of course, event that is clashing into the political national sphere, and the timing, we must say, is very, very delicate and very, very sensitive with the controversial Jewish state bill, exactly, which critics have already said would make democracy secondary to Israel's Jewish character. And here we see it with its full-blown capacity, with both sides, on the one hand, trying to give artistic and cultural way to their feelings, what they see, what they mean, and on the other hand, the only reason, in fact, that there's an emergency discussion this year and there was none last year is because many say of this Jewish bill, the state bill, and the fact that it clashes in such a sensitive time in Israel.
Yeah. So, and what reactions do we have from filmmakers?
Okay, so some of them say the foundation of the state was another outcome of the war, but this is not what the term refers to. One filmmaker says the focus here is not on the state of Israel, but the hardships that were inflicted on the Palestinians. It's another way to give voice to these people, and they think after dozens of festivals we have of the Jewish people, the Israeli people, the Jewish state, there's dozens of festivals worldwide about this matter. They think it's all right to give stage to the Palestinians as well, and once again they don't feel it conflicts with the identity of Israel as a Jewish state, and it doesn't mean that it does not exist.
Yeah, you know, I just stumbled upon a trailer for a new film that deals with the Anne Frank story in the retelling of Anne Frank's story by Palestinian girls in Gaza and in Ramallah. I think that maybe we could afford to have a festival.
It's true, but others might see it as retelling the narrative, and this is something very, very fundamental and sensitive in this conflict between Palestinians and Israelis. How do we retell the history? And the fact that saying the word Nakba in Israeli society has become such a taboo, and people want to be taboo breaking and want to, especially in the artistic sphere, want to push this forward and tell the narrative in a different way. This touches some very sensitive nerves, specifically in the Israeli political sphere.
Certainly is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go now to our friend, journalist, environment defender, and I should say radio personality
but I
now.
love the friend the most.
Above all, of course, Neta Achituv is here
morning.
in the studio. Good morning to you. What did you bring us? I think probably some less controversial issues, at least in Israel?
At least in Israel. Yeah, but in the world they're very controversial. And I'm glad you're here, you know, our culture guru, because the beautiful actress Melanie Laurent just participated in Paris this week in a big demonstration against trawling. You know what trawling is? It's a way of fishing, which they, you know, there's then a net behind the boat, and then it's being
dragged away.
And it leaves a desert in the sea afterwards.
It's like, it's not a fair fight.
Yeah, exactly. As some of the protesters said, it's like picking apples with a bulldozer. It's like that.
Taking candy from a baby.
Exactly.
Let's think of a few more.
No, it's like taking the whole candies from
taking the baby
from the whole supermarkets in the area. This is kind of it. So people are demonstrating in Paris against it. They want to ban it completely, and they're very angry at the...
Wait, what's the current status of it? Yeah, she is. Is it allowed at all?
Yes, it is allowed, and in France they are calling to ban it, and Ségolène Royal, actually, the Minister of Environment, tweeted last week that she is in favor of banning this terrible way of fishing fishing, and she's just waiting for the European Commission to do it, in a more globally way.
Right.
And the people were very happy with her tweet and decided to, support it with the demonstration. But it's totally legal, unfortunately, everywhere. There is quota. Like in Israel, for example, there are only 23 boats that are allowed to do it, and also the same everywhere in the world, but it's legal.
Yeah. And very problematic.
Actors and actresses taking action.
Yes, because then we can talk about it. And
Exactly. It actually brings us.
I really love it. Yes.
Some people use their
there are many
status for good.
environmentalists among them.
Yeah, certainly. And in Paris, we remember,
Yes,
in
Paris.
In France, it goes on and on.
Yes, and we're staying at the sea. There are good news for whales around the world. Actually, for Japanese whales, they have decided after a big controversy.
They could use it, I think.
Yeah, that they're bringing now the quota of scientific whaling, let's call it, from 900 a year to 300 a year. Everybody knows
that's pretty
it's
substantial.
Yeah, everybody knows it's for meat, but they call it scientific whaling because then it's easier to get permission.
Well, I think that they have this theory that there are scientific uses for it, and I guess they have to look into it or something.
Yes,
I don't know.
there are other ways to do scientific research, as observation or taking samples from the sea. You don't
talking
need to take
the whales,
exactly.
seeing how they are. Maybe they want something to drink.
Exactly. And scuba diving next to them. Yes, asking them how does it make them feel.
Wow, good news from the sea. It's a good day to be a fish.
Yes, and
or
it's
a mammal.
really good news to animal lovers and the green organizations, because it was after a really, really, really long campaign and a very successful one can say. The biggest organization known for it is Sea Shepherd, and they're actually really harassing the Japanese whaling ships. They're actually, coming. They're like pirates.
It might be working.
They're like Robin Hoods of the whales.
Yeah, of course, we're not encouraging anything, but you can. Maybe you are. But I guess it is working. Cutting their quota by a substantial amount.
Yeah, and
that's great.
because everybody was talking about it. It was news, media, and also the international court ruled in March that it's illegal to fish so many whales, and it worked.
Yeah.
Are the efforts now taking the 300 down to 0?
Yeah, they're trying to, which will be harder, but
300 is still
a
large
lot.
amount.
It's still a lot. They do hunt 250 in average a year, so they hope they will never reach the 300, but it's still something.
There's still
we have to
be made.
happy with each little progress.
Yeah. Every little whale counts.
Yes, exactly. And we're staying in the sea, and also some good news for sharks.
I'm not sure I feel the same way about this.
We have only good news today. No, it's good because they are not killing so many people as one might think. It's a myth. We all
Jaws ruined ruined sharks
Spielberg
for everybody.
is like the worst enemy of sharks in the world in history, I think.
They'll get the revenge one day.
Exactly. So in Cape Town, they have decided, which is in a very nice beach where surfers go, and there's lots of tourism, and there is a risk of being bitten by a shark.
It is a problem.
13 people died in 10 years. It's not a lot, but it is something. Yes. So they've decided to try this new method. It's electric wire that they put. Yes.
I'm sorry.
That doesn't sound good.
No, I was taught not to mix.
Good news?
So I can bring a toaster to my bath? Is that what you're saying?
I will explain. The shark's nose is very, very sensitive to pulses, to electric pulses.
Okay.
This is how they find their prey, actually, because they feel or hear. I don't know which sense it is, but yes, exactly. They hear the heart beating of the fish or the man or the prey they're going to kill, and that's why they're very, very sensitive, and they will get away from it, before even arriving to it. They're not going to be electrified or anything. That's why green organizations, again, animal lovers are very, very happy about this solution. Yes, because this is the way, nobody is being killed, no humans, no sharks in the making of this experiment, and everybody is very happy about it. And this is here you can see a demo.
The thing.
This is where the cable will be, and they will just go away. And the
is it
choice
already
of this,
there, or is
it's
it planned?
In a trial.
Tested and working?
Now it's on a trial period, and the reason they chose this beach is because the water is very clear, so they can actually see what's going on, how the sharks are doing a U-turn and going back to sea, and because it's a place that has been researched, so they know how many sharks are supposed to come and how many won't come, and so this is why they chose it.
All
and
right,
if it will succeed,
least,
it will go all over the world.
Last
one. Turtles are very happy these days. In Uruguay, 5,000 turtles were released to sea with families and kids. They always take families and kids there to raise awareness to the importance of them.
I hope that's not an actual turtle under the sand.
No. And this is in Peru, what we're actually seeing. 2,500 turtles were caught in a market for illegal trafficking. Wow. And they were taken by this very nice people who decided to release them back to the sea and, and stop this
even though they were trying to traffic something. It's not the turtle.
Yeah, no, the good guys took them.
Thank you so much, Neta.
Thank you.
Only good news. What else can we ask?
Exactly.
Still to come later on the show, Hugh Jackman, nearly unrecognizable as Blackbeard in the upcoming film Pan. Stay tuned, but first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Good morning, and thank you for staying with us. We are joined in the studio by i24 News cinema correspondent Leticia Loreni. The lovely Leticia. How are you, Leticia?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful, never better. But maybe I'll be even better by the end of this segment, depending on what you're about to tell me.
Well, I have to represent the feminine side of i24 News today by announcing that also in Hollywood, the feminists are coming out and females are coming out. It's been said, it's official, that a woman director will direct the new episode, the first episode of Wonder Woman, which will star Gal Gadot. So this woman director is called Michelle McLaren, and maybe you don't know her for her movies because it's actually her first feature film. But it's, as you said, she's been around in the TV series world for a while. She's directed episodes of Game of Thrones. She's directed some episodes of Walking Dead, but she's undoubtedly best known for her directing of 11 episodes of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and she's even involved, as I understood, in the Breaking Bad spin-off.
Exactly.
Better Call Saul. Yeah. So that's great. Is she the? I think she's the first female director on this
superhero
Marvel universe that they're creating.
For sure, she's the first woman director in the Marvel universe. In the superhero universe, there was one female director, Lexi Alexander, who made The Punisher. Warzone, which was not the bad.
Greatest.
It wasn't the greatest movie. It wasn't that bad, but it is the first super. And Wonder Woman is for the first time adapted on screen in the movies. It's on the big, yes, exactly. It was a huge hit as a TV series, but nobody ever really wanted to adapt it on screen because nobody wanted to kill that. Because Catwoman has been killed already.
Well, Catwoman
has been destroyed.
It's only too late, if you ask me.
Yeah.
If we could have avoided that Halle Berry appearance, that would have been beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, but I think
Halle Berry.
Yeah, that's true. But I really believe that this Wonder Woman will be great because I think they're gonna make a dark version of it, like the same way they did with Batman. Gal Gadot, we've seen one image of her coming out in the press and for Batman versus Superman that she just shot, and she looks like a dark Wonder Woman in not the blue and white tie, blue shorts and white tights. I believe it's gonna be some serious movies.
You're
serious
so optimistic.
trilogy. I hope so.
I always like to say this film is gonna suck, and then I'm pleasantly surprised. You know,
that's what we all should do, and I should just stop my job.
You're a Wonder Woman.
All right, that's regardless of the end product, I think it's great news.
Yeah.
Of course, Zack Snyder is going to first direct Gal Gadot in the Batman vs Superman, or should I say, already did.
He did.
And we'll see what happens with her feature. It is in capable hands. We've all seen Breaking Bad, and you know, she can create drama, no doubt. What else do you have?
I have From Woman to Monsters, which can sometimes be linked.
We're not going far.
Monsters, Dinosaurs. Actually, Jurassic World's first trailer came out, and actually, it looks amazing. I want you to take a look at it.
Let's. All right, before we
have so much fun. And remember, if something chases you, run.
gorgeous stuff. So I'm so excited about this. I mean, of course, it's gonna suck. So I'm pleasantly surprised, but I'm excited about it.
No, actually, what's amazing about this first look at Jurassic World is that we completely remember 1993 Jurassic Park. Like, it's totally nostalgic. They really give an homage to the first series.
The park is finally open.
Yeah.
You know, they've been trying to get it open since 1993.
Yes.
And it's finally open. Although, I gotta say, it's really dangerous stuff, you know, because it's as if they didn't see the first Jurassic Park. Don't they know what could happen?
Well, I think they should have been aware of those dinosaur risks.
Well, so what's going on now is that it became normal for people to have these little dinosaurs, and some crazy scientist is going to create a hybrid type, and it's going to be a very, very, very angry dinosaur.
And probably very intelligent.
Yeah,
and
of course. Yeah.
I gotta say, what I loved about this trailer is that they are certainly using some of the great elements from the first film. You know, the sound. And the music, it really
and some
throws
shots
you back.
Also. There's some shots that, you know, like that kid, we didn't see it right now, but the kid, you know, in the dark with this noise of the dinosaur arriving slowly, remind us of this scene where, I think it was Jeff Goldblum.
When is it coming out?
It's coming out on June 12th. You're not paying attention, that was written on the trailer.
Okay.
Another trailer that's gonna mark everyone. It's this new Pan trailer, and it's kind of leaving his mark because of this look of Hugh Jackman that remind us a lot of Johnny Depp character.
And what he did to himself. It's mostly, I think it doesn't look that much like Johnny Depp, but it's like the same transformation.
Yes.
You know, it's what Johnny Depp did to himself in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I think Hugh Jackman's trying to do now.
Well, Johnny Depp did it for the Pirates of the Caribbean, and it actually seems that he's been doing it for the past 10 years, this exact same type of, look, even in Lone Ranger, which wasn't a great movie, but, you know, he kind of...
You know, let's take a look at Hugh Jackman in the trailer.
Exactly.
Come back.
That's what I was going to say.
Well. The princess, I presume.
Oh, well, I'm actually just a minor, but I appreciate the compliment.
Bishop.
Are you insane?
Have you come to get me, Peter?
I don't believe in bedtime stories.
It's a little spooky.
Yeah.
No, I gotta say, because, you know, my daughter, who's almost 3, is obsessed with Peter Pan. Obsessed. But
Which Peter Pan, though?
Well, she has a few Peter Pans.
Yeah.
I just exposed her to Hook.
Yeah.
But I think that's as mature as I'm gonna go.
Okay.
I think this is maybe a little bit different age group. So
Well,
what do
we'll
we
see.
know about it?
Well, we know that it's the Atonement director that's directing it. His name is J.M. Barrie. Sorry, he's not. I'm sorry, J.M. Barrie is actually the original author of Peter Pan.
Okay.
Sorry, it's the Atonement director that I didn't write his name down, and I actually don't remember it. Sorry, it's early in the morning. We know that Hugh Jackman is playing Blackbeard, and he looks very similar to Johnny Depp, as we said, and that it's like this Peter Pan is actually completely different from Hook and from any Peter Pan we
Disney's
saw.
Peter
And
Pan,
we
of
also know that there's always a controversial story about these movies that are coming out, and this controversial story is actually not that great because Rooney Mara is playing Tiger Lily, which is supposed to be a Native American princess character. So that's the controversy about. We're going to hear a lot about that. Actually, I think there's going to be the same all over again with this Peter Pan character. We never know how they're going to portray it and how controversial it's going to be.
Well, I think at this point in time, they're not going to recast it, and at least it's making some headlines, helping the PR of the film. Leticia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's move on to Tony now, who's here to tell us what's trending on the web.
Well, I'm going to tell you, first of all, happy Thanksgiving. It is Thanksgiving will be soon in the United States. And that brings me to the question, what are you thankful for? Don't answer, because I know what I'm thankful for.
The list goes on. I don't think we have enough time. You're thankful for Rihanna.
A new Rihanna track has been leaked.
I'm surprised. I'm just surprised it's not Madonna.
No. There's an Instagram teaser of a new Rihanna song, so a lot of people are very intrigued by that. So
on Instagram.
Yeah, we don't know what it's about. It's a bit of a video there. It's sort of very cryptic. So all I know is that more information will be coming out soon, and we'll be following that for all of our viewers.
Wow.
Yes. So
all right.
Yes.
That's certainly very
interesting news.
Very interesting.
And she was off of Instagram for a while, but now she's back on.
I think that's the really interesting part of it, that she chose to promote
do the
it on
teaser
Instagram.
on Instagram.
Exactly. I think it shows the direction that these
it's an important social media tool.
Certainly.
Not for Prince, who now apparently has dropped out of all social media. This is very interesting stuff.
Was he ever on?
He was. He once did a Q&A on Facebook. He answered one question. He had a Twitter account. Now it's for Third High Girl. Yeah, he's not a man of many words unless it's his lyrics. He's now out of it completely. He's disappeared from the social media scene. No one really knows why, but he's Prince, so we don't even have to ask.
Yeah, well, at least he's back to being Prince.
Yeah. So that's always a legend.
As long as he doesn't disappear from the scene, as other
Exactly.
artists.
Also in Thanksgiving news, and of course, happy Thanksgiving to everyone in America. The New York Times has done an interesting story about the Thanksgiving recipes Googled in each of the 50 American states.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Really cool stuff. Things that you never dreamed existed, actually. Like if you're from Delaware, you're Googling the recipe for pretzel salad, which is kind of terrifying. If you're in Illinois, you're Googling the recipe for Hawaiian salad, which is also kind of terrifying. It involves
vegan mushroom gravy.
It's amazing stuff. I mean, guess what? In New York, stuffed artichokes.
What? That sounds great.
Do you like artichokes?
I love artichokes. I had one last night.
Artichokes are disgusting.
Like one? Like the whole one?
Yes.
You ate an artichoke. You had a whole artichoke.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you mean?
There's very hard to eat.
It's I don't know.
Like a whole, wow. Well,
you eat the leaves, and then you get to the heart, and then you eat that. And that's
you take out the hair, the weird hair.
I don't know.
You guys are the weird ones.
It's easier. It's easier to eat mashed butternut squash.
Tell us what you think about artichokes.
Yes, artichokes. Artichokes in America. Massachusetts, where Thanksgiving was born.
Right.
Mashed butternut squash is the most Googled recipe. A classic, a Thanksgiving classic.
It's going to be on my dinner table.
Ah, well, chocolate's going to be on mine. Anyway, hummus might be as well, because of course, hummus, we should all be thankful for that. I am. And now apparently it can help you stop smoking.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if you, how is that? I don't know. Because if you eat hummus every time you feel like having a cigarette?
That's what they're trying to encourage now, because apparently hummus is made from chickpeas.
Yeah, but you know, if you eat anything when you feel like having a cigarette, you won't have the cigarette. You'll eat that thing.
Yeah, but
That's
if you...
So, you know, bacon can help you stop smoking.
This is true, but hummus is better for the people that grow the chickpeas.
Okay.
Yes, because that's what they're saying in this new...
And probably better for you also.
Yeah,
than,
it's part of a hummus awareness campaign that's going on now in the States. So I think it's great stuff. Also on a food note, because it is Thanksgiving, it's all about food.
Yeah.
Should you be putting butter in your coffee?
Yes.
In your coffee?
You should be. You should be putting butter everywhere.
Yeah, I think. I mean, Thanksgiving is the day that butter, you know, just goes just about everywhere you can find a turkey. But they're saying
I heard about this.
Have you?
I did.
It's part of the paleo diet, which is kind of a fad diet, but it has its people who like it. Apparently, it sort of levels out the caffeine release in the coffee when you add butter to it, so it's a more sort of like a time trickle effect for caffeine release. But it makes your coffee taste kind of like butter.
I don't know, Tony. I dare you to bring one example of a thing that isn't better with butter. It even sounds good, better with butter.
Gee, I mean, even Wonder Woman.
If you try applying butter to Wonder Woman, I'm sure it will be amazing.
No, there's so many things we could say about butter, but do we have time for cocktails?
Very quick one.
Okay, very interesting story in the Wall Street Journal about the Ritz Paris, one of the most famous hotels in the world, the famous Hemingway bar, arguably the most famous. It's actually under renovation.
Yeah,
so they talk about the bartender who's actually roaming around the world and talking about his views on cocktails while he's absenting himself from work. Interestingly, he compares bartending to haute couture. Yeah, and he said, if you're a lady and you show up at the bar, the garnish that he'll use in your drink is directly proportional to what color dress you're wearing.
Oh my God.
What do you think of that?
This guy loves his job.
Yeah.
He's probably really good at it.
I think he is. Yeah, he knows how to sling a Singapore sling and make a Negroni, and I don't know, but he says keep the cocktail simple. Don't order a Long Island iced tea no matter what you do.
I think French people just see fashion everywhere, you know?
Yeah, well, he's actually,
perhaps.
I don't know if he's
Perhaps
French, but he works
why.
in Paris, so.
All right, Tony. Interesting as always. Thank you,
Thank you
so
happy
much.
Holiday.
And happy holiday. I'm thankful for Tony and Leticia. I don't want to leave anyone out. And I'm thankful for you at home who joined us this morning. Thank you so much. Please join us again tomorrow for another edition of the Morning Edition. Until then, you can find the latest news on our website, i24news.tv. We'll be right here tomorrow. Be there as well.